Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Teacher Talk. I am so excited to have you here with us, and I'm more excited to share with you my new Teacher Talk guest. Today, I have the one and only Laurie McIntosh with me, and I have to say she's a co-author of a book called Teachers These Days, which is a super exciting book that's making its way around the world. But the reason I love Laurie, and the reason maybe many of you know her, is her incredible posts on Instagram, her connection in social media. In fact, she's so good in how she shows up for her students at her school. She's almost made me want to have another baby just to put them in her classroom. I just am in awe of the way she connects with kids. And I'm so thrilled you're here today, Laurie. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that we get to sit and it's always so lovely to sit with people that inspire me as well, right? And help me further my practice. So I'm grateful we can have this conversation together.
Thank you. Well, when I put out into the world of social media, I said, who do you want to hear from? And your name came up many times. And I was so thrilled to be able to reach out and say, hey, Laurie, come chat with me. And I love that you're an educator. And my first question really is like, what led you into education? Why did you become a teacher?
Yeah, and it's so funny because I don't have one of those big story or lightning bulb moment about becoming an educator. I think the way I like to explain it is that people knew I was going to be a teacher before I knew I was going to be a teacher. So my mom tells stories of me, knocking on the neighbors' doors and on a random Saturday morning and collecting all the children from the block and telling their families, come 5 o'clock, come out, bring your lawn chairs to the street in the little cul-de-sac we lived in, and we're going to put on a parade for you. And I would just take the kids and we'd practice all day and we'd make tickets and posters and banners. And so, I loved babysitting and I loved having that leadership role within my elementary school even. And I think it just kind of, teaching was one of those things I think I was probably called to, and I kept kind of ignoring it and pushing it away a little. I really wanted to go into journalism or media. And I was the kind of kid even that, at 12, I decided I wanted to go into journalism. So I called the local TV station and said, like, what can I do there? I'm going to do this with my life. So what can I do? And they said, well, we're looking for a kid to host a show. Do you want your own show? And I did that for years, or I did like the weather on the radio, and I did commercials for them because I was so positive that's what I wanted to do. And the universe has just a very bizarre way of working. When I hit high school, what I thought I was going to go into was this place where people did know me and recognize me, and that I had offered a lot to our community, but I was relentlessly shamed for it, made fun of. And I started to panic and go like, is this really what I want to do, is put myself out there this much? And, I remember there was a blooper reel they put out on the TV show I did. And just that whole feeling of like, they're not laughing with me, they're laughing at me. And so that combined with a pretty toxic high school relationship, I started exploring. I was terrified to go to university, terrified. I was not a partier. I was not a girl. I was not very social. I think I was, well liked by my peers and my friends, but I wasn't really a risk taker when it came to wanting to leave my hometown and the comforts of those things. So despite being someone who is quite determined to, call up and say, hey, I'll have a show, the thought of leaving home, I grew up in Fort McMurray. I thought I'd be there forever. So I actually came down to the University of Lethbridge, and they were doing a combined program at the time, the double degree in 5 years. And a friend of mine was doing that. And I thought, you know what? People have always said I should be a teacher. I know that's what I wanted to do before I thought about this whole media journey, and decided to make the jump. So I tell the story that I couldn't get into the University of Lethbridge here, into their faculty of education. So 4 years later, instead of that 5, I actually graduated with a Bachelor of Arts, and wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I headed home to Fort McMurray. And I picked up a job very quickly as an educational assistant. And those were 5 of the most precious years of my life. I still have strategies I use in the classroom today that are based on teachers I got to spend time with. I work with the world's best children. I know we all say that, but wow, that time was so precious, and I learned so much. And it was actually a really good friend of ours who was the principal, whose school I worked at. Some changes were coming about in my life, and he said, if I just keep renewing this contract for you every year, you're here forever. I know you. And I really think that it would be best if, you didn't do this anymore, that you need your own classroom. You need to move on from here. And he was the one that gave me that final push into getting a classroom of my own. Yeah. So, so I headed off to the University of Alberta and grabbed my after degree there. And and as far as becoming a kindergarten teacher, I taught grade 2 for 8 years, loved it. I thought, again, I love with my whole heart. So when I start something and I love it, I think I'm just going to do it forever. I'm one of those people. So grade 2, I'll just do this forever. I don't need to ever switch grades. And actually, after having my third child, I was suffering from terrible postpartum depression, and I was really struggling, and even not sure if I wanted to be in education anymore. And I went to our principal and said, hey, I'd like to go part-time. I think mental health wise, this is what I'm going to have to do. And he said, well, funny you should say that. A position just opened up in kindergarten. And I literally did this, Lisa. Oh, I'll take kindergarten. If it's part-time, I'll do it. That's how I went into kindergarten. And now, do not tear me away. Please let me stay is all I think. So it's just been a journey, actually, of kind of things coming my way. And I've learned from my dear friend, Christina Fox, that sometimes, we hear the calling, but we don't acknowledge it. And furthermore, we don't respect that calling. So really, as I reflect on the journey, there was so many times that I tried to push that away. But I know now that I was meant to go through it all to become the teacher that I am today.
And so lucky that you went through those moments and those things, because it's made you who you are today. And I know it's easy in retrospect to say that, and
Absolutely.
And we know this, but I love hearing these stories, because I think you're human, like so many people. Something comes up and there's resistance, right? I don't want change. Change is hard.
No.
Don't
and you think about,
there.
This time of year, how many of us are experiencing that, right? And you can really see who is, with admin changes or school changes or grade changes or whatever it might be, new programs coming in, curriculum, you can see who thrives on that change, who really gets excited by that change. And you can see who are paralyzed by the fear of that change, right? So it all brings us to a pretty magical place, if you ask me.
Well, and I think so too. And I think we're in a society now that is learning to be better in discomfort, right? It's hard. It's hard to sit in these messy spots. But once we learn that we actually are more capable and resilient than we believe in ourselves, and we start to have that that power within, then we can realize that we can actually do those hard things. We can get through them. And how lucky you had people who sort of gave you the pushes and the reminders and listen to those callings, because finding your way into kindergarten, it sounds like it is just the place where you were meant to be.
Yeah, without knowing it, without having a clue that is where I could shine, right?
Yeah.
Just going in thinking okay, I know this isn't meant for me, but I'll do what I do. And then ultimately just falling head over heels. I think that you're right. We can say, that hindsight can be really hard, and to look back and see the struggle along the way. And in the midst of it, it can feel so long and it can feel so hard. To sit here now and go, oh, okay, it makes sense in a different way. Yeah.
For those people, like you were saying, we're in it right now, there's changes happening around. Change is inevitable. We know this. It's inevitable. Even every year in our classrooms, we get a new group of kids. We never know who's going to show up in front of us. What words would you say to people who are sort of sitting in that tension or that resistance to it a little bit? Is there something that you've gained through your career that sort of reminds you this is okay? What would you offer?
Yeah, I think that I really leaned on a couple of different quotes. We were just saying, before we hit record here, that I actually moved cities too. And,
Hmm.
to go from a place that I just adored so much. And literally, it was laying on my bed with my husband saying, like, is this it? Like, they were just going to stay here for like 30 years and I'll just teach for this district and you just teach for your place and we're just here. Like, is that
Hmm.
it? And we packed up and moved our family. And it shook people because that isn't in my nature generally. And I think for me, I really leaned on a couple of quotes, but a big part for me was just instead of seeing change as something scary, is to see it as new opportunity.
Hmm.
So when change comes about, that's what I find is, we're going to
Hmm.
introduce this new program or this new administrator is going to come in and work, or we're going to change this policy, or, okay, you have, a new student coming in mid-year, whatever that big change is, I
Yeah.
really try and look for the opportunity
Hmm.
instead of seeing it as a hindrance or something scary. I like to think of it as like a chance to restart. I've had a
Yeah.
couple of big restarts in my life, and those like, second chances, third chances, fourth chances. And I think that I see it as opportunity of a chance to try something new, be something new, become something new. So that's what I really lean on as the opportunity fact. We're getting a new administrator this year, and it breaks my heart that the one we have is leaving. Hurts my heart to
Hmm.
even think about it. Um, Ultimately, I know though that my complacency as a teacher that inevitably will sneak up. Yes, on Mrs. Mack, like I'm human. I know new energy in the building will also renew what I want to show, what I want to give, and will renew my role within our community, right?
Hmm.
So we were just saying before we said this, like I love the fact that I can grieve what was before the change, but also celebrate what comes from the.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and not only are you holding such a courageous mindset, you're also learning that you can, like you said, hold the grief and the gratitude in the same container, right? I often talk about the container of compassion. And once we hold
Oh,
this container of compassion, we can be both, sad and, happy. And we can feel the huge container of
yes,
emotions because we're sort of grounded in our belief and our strength. And so much courage that I'm hearing you speak of, and modeling for these new teachers and modeling for these people who are sort of like in that frozen, like, I don't know how to manage all this change. There's so many
absolutely.
obstacles educators face, right? And so I love how you inspire and model this for
Thank
so many
you.
people, Laurie. It's just such a beautiful, beautiful place to see. um I have a question for you about education right now. We know that there's change and we know that there's a lot of stress. And I know you speak with a lot of educators and you hear the overwhelm that people are feeling. But I'm really focused on wellness. And I want to know from you, what would it look like or feel like? What does it mean to be well at school? What do you think that would look like?
So I have always appreciated that about what you put out into the world is you do have such a focus on the wellness piece. And I think that for me right now to look well, I kind of, when I speak, we talk a lot about being weary. And
Mhm.
when somebody says, how are you feeling? And I say tired, it's not actually tired. I'm weary. And the
Mhm.
weariness, um, for me personally, doesn't come from the children. The weariness comes from the broken systems that I'm a part of and that I'm trying to function in. And so for me, the word weary, when I know, I mean, I'm really honest about my mental health journey and working with incredible therapists and I know right now the word for me weary when I have started to have less desire for the things that I love. When
Mhm.
I stand at my computer and I'm ready to make a plan for our kindergarten class and nothing comes to my mind, when my patience is just so much smaller than it's been, I know that I'm in that weary mindset. I'm in that weary space, right? And so for me, well is going to be the opposite of the weary. For me, I really believe that schools that are well, again, learning through my friend Christina Fox, is that, you know, we say in teachers these days, sometimes we have adults that forget that these buildings were not made for adults to have jobs. These buildings were made for children to be educated and loved and acknowledged. And Christina's taught me that they should also be places of healing. So if your building is causing harm and is not helping heal everyone in that community, not just the children, the families we serve, the teachers, the educational assistants, as a community, if that community is not healing, then it needs to be fixed, right? So to me, a well place is a place of healing for all. It's a place where everyone's healing is considered, where there's grace and there's kindness for wherever someone is on their journey. You know, my favorite is when I can speak openly and say, like, I'm not tired, I'm weird. And somebody can go, me too, me too. Mm-hmm. Like, what can we do? What can we do for each other? How can we help like, what can we do? You know, and I think, like, to me, that whole sense of community and connection, you know, again, we say in the book, the hardest thing to do when we're in pain is to connect, but it's essential that we do so. So those connected communities where people feel seen and acknowledged and heard. I want to be able, as an educator, I'm not looking for a place to go and invent. I'm not looking to a place, we've been talking, Jimmy Cass has taught me that, you know, teachers are awfulizers. And I remember hearing that and thinking, like, what? That is offensive. But the more I sat with it, I'm an awfulizer. Yeah. You bring a new program to me, the first thing I'm going to do is make it awful. I'm going to tell you all the reasons we shouldn't do it and what we're doing okay. It's working right now, and we're just going to have to, I'm going to awfulize it. Yeah. And that's what we do with change, right? We awfulize it first before we process and let it kind of sink in, and we get that time. But my initial reaction is to awfulize. So to me, you know, I don't want to be as part of a group of awfulizers. I want to be in community with people where I can say, I feel shame, I feel hurt, I feel sad, I feel mad. I want to be able to say those things without judgment. I want to be able to say those things knowing that I'm going to be held and acknowledged, and that I'm still worthy to be in that building, and that I'm still a good educator.
And you are. I love this, because I think also our system and our buildings are set up to not connect, right? We're in silos, we're in these spaces. It's really hard. And when we are feeling weary, I love this word weary, it's really hard to have the capacity sometimes to turn to a colleague and say, I'm not okay. Or like, I just need to just sit for a second. Can you help me out? Because of the levels of shame and worry and fear that come with it. And when we create a culture that says, it's okay, I got you, like, you take what you need, you know, and in compassion, so go ahead.
Yeah, no. And I think, like, what you're saying is so true. And I think then it becomes like, there's even this higher level than that, when people know me so well that I'm walking down the hall and I don't have to speak a word. And they just know. I don't have to be in full blown tears. I don't have to be stomping my way down the hall, but they can just tell, okay, I got to check on her today. Yeah. I'm going to just say, how can I help? Yeah. You know, like, I think you're right. There's this compassion piece that you talk so beautifully of, where we can go, like, this does not mean I'm not a successful educator, that I am not somebody who's making a difference in all the things I got into this for. It means that I'm human and that I am going to suffer, and I am going to have those times where I struggle, but I'm still worthy.
Oh, and I think that permission giving is probably one of the strongest things we can give to educators out there in the world, who often get caught in perfectionist thinking, or believe that they're not good enough, or they're not worthy, or that they have to be a certain level of humanness, right? And it doesn't exist. And I love the way you put yourself in the world, Laurie, because you really
Thank
give
you.
us permission to be human. And I love how you say creating a culture and a community around you that people can see you and be like, let me just put my arm around you and say, like, what do you need today, Laurie? How can I
Yeah.
help? Right?
Oh,
Those are the
yeah.
people we want around us. And we can be those people for others once we have capacity too.
And,
Yeah.
I think I've been learning more and more about this lately as I talk to educators, even in my own, talks that I give, there's a lot of focus on, on what we have to offer the communities we serve and the families we serve and the children we serve. And of course, that's an integral part of what we do. It's why we're there. I think that it's just hitting me now, though, just how deeply I need to be able to recognize and acknowledge that I also.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
often we overcomplicate, right? So if I saw someone in kindergarten that maybe wasn't using words and wasn't crying and wasn't saying, like, today's awful, but I could just tell they were down, I know how I'd step in for them.
Mhm.
And I want the same in return because really we're connected in that humanness. We're
Mhm.
connected. And it's not about me being 43 and them being 5.
Yeah,
Our needs are
totally.
still, those human needs are still there, those social needs, those connection needs. And I think, everything that we talk about and like what we want to do for the kids, we have to be able to recognize that we also deserve that. I
Yeah.
want love and empathy and I want kindness in our community. I want that for our kids, but I also want that in my soul.
And you know what's beautiful is then when we start to realize that we can also recognize that we can offer ourselves that,
Yes. Yes.
right? So
That is so
when you
good.
see that 5-year-old who is struggling and you go, I know what they're going through. When we have enough awareness that says, oh, this one too is struggling right now. Like I know what it's like to feel weary and overwhelmed and tired and just need some love. There's some work we can do around saying, you are worthy. I am worthy. I can be loved. I can offer myself. We use the question, what do I need right now in self-compassion a lot. It's just that beautiful reminder of meeting ourselves the way we would meet our 5-year-old students, right? Oh,
Exactly. Yeah. No,
so
I could feel
powerful.
like I could breathe just with you saying that, right? Like I can feel it physically in my body, just like exactly like that reciprocal relationship between us to be able, I want to be a needs noticer, but I'll tell you what, I have a lot of 5-year-old need noticers in my class too.
Mhm.
And they notice when Mrs. Mack needs something too. And we have that for each other. And I just think that's
Mhm.
like the most beautiful, unexpected part of teaching for me. Here I went in
Oh,
thinking I was just going to be a fixer. Come to find out, they don't need to be fixed. They're not little
no.
problems to be fixed. They're humans to be
Mm.
loved and honored and cherished and treasured. But I am also that, right? And it
Mhm.
takes a while. It takes, and I think if I could go back to first year Laurie, third year Laurie, 7th year Laurie, that's what would be my advice, right? Is
Yeah.
you are also worthy.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not broken. There's no fixing,
No,
like
no.
you are a human being who is loved and cared for and can
Yeah.
show up just as you are and doing the best
Yeah.
that you can. Like if we were to give ourselves those messages on a regular basis,
Yes.
you think that would shift our culture if we knew how to do that for ourselves?
Absolutely. And I think, I've been bombarded with the message the past 2 weeks. I listened to Caitlin Curtis podcast with Glennon Doyle and Abby Wambach. And I heard again, Miss Fox speaking today and we had our guest speaker yesterday, Jesse, at our professional development day. And the amount of that I keep hearing about that little child within us,
Mhm.
like to have faith that that little child within us did the best we could, and to be able, that's why I think it's such a gift to teach kindergarten. I get to go be little 5-year-old Laurie all the time, and that
Mhm.
5-year-old Laurie is being reassured through what I do as a teacher. She's being acknowledged and recognized through me as an adult now as a teacher, right? And I think you're
Mhm.
right. If we could all go back to that place where we first started learning that was not how we felt. We
Yeah.
didn't feel worthy. You had to be your best or. You know, I talk about it. I say I was the kid who like smelled good, looked good, returned all my permission forms and library books. Like I was the compliant child that people dreamed of. And so that completely affected the way I was treated in my school. But little did they know what was going on in this little heart.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there'd still be people who would be shocked to hear what was going on in here. So to be able to
You know
go
what's
back.
amazing? I was gonna say,
Yeah.
and like we want to go back and tell that 5-year-old, but the 5-year-old is within us, and we can meet her just the way she is right now,
Right.
and offer that like deep love right now where we're at, so that as we continue to grow, we grow alongside, and we grow and we stay connected. I mean, there's lots of beautiful inner child work, but if we even just start with the meeting ourselves with a bit of care where we're at, it softens all of what came before. I love how you talked about before this, healing, this a place of school being a place of healing. That's what wellness looked like to you. And when we can heal and help ourselves, it helps create a safer healing environment for everyone who's in the building.
Right. And you do this beautifully in the spaces you show up, and it's that modeling of that healing too, right? To be able to share that. That's why I'm so grateful for Instagram. I started that page for my mom, who was 4 hours away, and I just needed someone to say, I'm so proud of you. Look at what you're doing with those babies. You're amazing. And now I'm out there saying like, my deepest, like my not darkest. I mean, I do share some things that are not light, that's for sure. But I feel so free in sharing that journey and saying like, here's what happened, and here's what I've learned, and here's where it brought me, and here's what I still have to unlearn about those things. And to take it all and put it out into that space, you can model that healing. And I think that's how we humanize, when you use the word, how do we humanize? And I think so much of that is normalizing. I want to normalize repair and apologizing to children.
Yes.
I want to be able to say, guys, I messed up too. And I am so sorry for the way I just treated you. And I'm going to do better. I want to model, the healing. I want to model how I regulate myself. So when I feel myself climbing in the class, I talk myself through it out loud so our kids can hear. And we know there's so many things that if they haven't been taught and they haven't been practiced, that's why I believe so much in kindness. People will say, well, it's innate in all of us. And I say, well, is it? If you've never had the opportunity to practice kindness, if nobody's ever shown you that kindness, how do you know? So it's modeling all that, like I say, which you do so beautifully. And I think as a community, when you can find those people that do the modeling for you, it gives you the courage to do the modeling in return.
And I believe modeling is probably one of the best ways we can show up as educators. And even you talk about modeling kindness, and I hear you also saying, you may not even be aware of it, but you're modeling self-kindness, like your concept of, I'm dysregulating, I'm feeling myself go, and I'm just going to meet myself with a bit of gentleness, and this is how I do it, and here's how I don't get upset with myself and show myself shame, and I'm just going to take a big breath. And kids are learning that they don't have to be upset and then be shamed because they're upset, because you're showing this process of moving from dysregulation back to regulation with a temperament of care and a temperament of kindness. And what a platform for our kids to learn as a basis. Like, this is incredible. I love it so much. Oh, Laurie, what keeps you going when you hit weariness? Like we were just talking about being human, and I love your vulnerability, but in our humanness, we get down, right? Like I know I've had weeks lately where it's just my motivation is low. It's hard. What's your why that helps you show up to work with these beautiful babes?
I think there's a few parts of that question. I think I'm finally leaning into the fact that as an educator, I've always just kind of viewed my why within the four walls of our classroom. And I'm starting to recognize my role beyond the four walls now. And not only with myself and, getting opportunities to speak or even come and sitting with you today. I'm not just even talking about that or sharing on Instagram. I'm even talking about how I'm sending these kids
Mhm.
out into the world, what I hope I'm instilling and practicing at a young age that become routine and a part of their
Yeah.
lives. So that's a big part of it. When I get down, I am somebody who is a list maker, and I'm somebody who's learned a lot of, like strategies through therapy that sometimes I go through. Oh, I'll use it for a while and then I don't need it anymore. And then I'll kind of pop back into my life. So some of my favorite ways, I mean, I am a brain dump kind of girl. I recognize the power of writing it down in a scribbly disaster of a mess. I've got one here now. And just kind of letting go of some of the things that are taking up space that don't need to. So I have little strategies like that. I am, again, because of that needs noticer within me and that empath within me, I have had to really lean into the fact that I've always been told, like, what do you do for self-care? And if it's for self-care, it can only be for you and it can only be about you. And I'm realizing more and more that that's not the case for me. So that's where,
Yeah.
the whole kindness, stuff comes
Mhm.
from. And I really learned that through my daughter when I realized the best way to get her to calm down when she was really dysregulated was to just flip a card and a pen across the table at her, and she would start writing thank you notes, or she would start writing
Mhm.
notes of kindness to people, and that was like
Mhm.
such a regulation tool within her. And my other so finding joy with that, and finding joy in noticing people's needs. It's simple things, and it's not always a tangible. I always get that. No, I know tangibles are my easy examples when I'm sitting here having a conversation like this. But I was passing by Winners the other day, and in the clearance bin there was a 99-cent mug of the Golden Girls, and I thought, oh, cute. I don't know really. I don't. And immediately I thought back to a trivia night we had. And an educational assistant in our room could name the first names and last names of all the Golden Girls. So I picked it up right away. And I mean, I wrapped it today in the worst way I could. And I put some funny little Post-it notes on it, and it's in our mailbox. That is literally what's getting me through today. Do you know what I mean? I'm sitting here tonight
100%.
overwhelmed by what I need to do, thinking, hey, we haven't had school for 2 days and I'm not there on Friday and I only have 2 days and I'm only this far into the alphabet. I'm doing all the things. And all I can think is like, wait. But she's going to find that mug tomorrow and it's going to be awesome. And I know she's going to pop in, and I know she's going to be proudly walking around with, like, I am that kind of person who needs to find those things for others. And
Yeah.
I'm also somebody who very much has learned that I need to mindfully and thoughtfully plan for joy.
Mhm.
I sat for years and years, part of a very toxic relationship, waiting for joy to find me and to just fall into my lap. And I get the concept of looking for it around me, but at that time I had blinders on. I couldn't see it. I couldn't feel it. So that's my big reminder when I go into the classroom. At the top of every plan is my joy for the day. How are you bringing joy to the space today? So
Beautiful.
I love to
Can
find
I, can we
ways.
just pause? Just
Yeah,
pause for
for
a second.
sure.
Because I want to say that line again, because
Yeah.
how are you bringing joy to the class today, right?
Yeah.
Like, what a gift for
Yeah.
every teacher to walk in. And not everybody's going to have the same capacity for
No.
energy and connection, but they're going to all be able to bring something of themselves. And
Yeah.
I just want to honor what you just said, because
Thank
you're
you.
leading your lesson on joy,
Yeah.
on making that is the priority of learning.
And just like, we talk about in the book, we talk about a light up. And I say, when I saw Dr. Jody Carrington do the first light, like first time she lit up for me, I was like, oh my gosh, I have so much practice. Like, okay, because that's a light up. Like, it's big and it's loud and it's amazing and it just makes you feel. And so I would go home and practice in the mirror how I was going to light up for people. And I realized it wasn't authentic to me. Right.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think I've learned that about joy too, is joy is not just a feeling of big and loud and happy. And, joy for me on the hard days might just be pulling out that one book that I
Yeah.
just love the sound of my voice reading. And I know those little guys are going to have their mouths open and
Yeah.
everywhere, it doesn't have to be big and bold and bright and loud and sunshine. Joy can be smaller than that. So I think that just relearning what I've learned about joy, even to be able to say, I'm overwhelmed, I'm weary, whatever the words may be, but to be well today in this space, how am I going to bring joy to it? Just helps me shift that mindset.
I think this is the most beautiful gift we can give. And I think the most important word you used in there was the word authentic. Like you can see someone else's light up and you can see, for me, I'm not a big flashy light up person. I too am. I like, hey, I see you, right? Like I just have got you. And so being and bringing our most authentic selves for others to light up for them, and then to recognize what are the moments of joy, because life's not lived in joy. It's not lived in happiness. It's not lived in a container of that always. It's lived in all kinds of things. And so it's finding what lights you up and then sharing your light with others in the most authentic way possible.
Being like, and having appreciation for your light up. I can feel it virtually right now. When you say, let me pause, because I don't think you understand how powerful that is. I'm just like, oh, that is light up, right? And I think that I try really hard when I go into sessions with teachers. And I mean, I've done some even at universities for newer teachers, and saying that, just by virtue of the fact that I am me and you are you, we are going to do things differently. There are things you can do that I can't, because I'm not you.
And vice versa. Totally.
And vice versa. And I think that's what's beautiful about this. I can show up all you want. My favorite compliment is when people say, you're exactly who I thought you'd be after watching you on Instagram. I love it. It's that authenticity. And honestly, when they say that, it affirms that I'm going the right way, in the right direction, because that is how I want to show up, is authentically. I also can really appreciate the fact that I can go on and I can show up as Mrs. Max Kinders online, and I can show you all the beautiful things I do. But they're me. They're at the heart of me. So I'm not expecting that everyone gets on that page and goes, oh, we're all doing it now, everybody, because that may not be where your heart is. And I respect that and understand that. And I honor that, because we're all going to show up in these spaces differently. And all I can do is show up authentically. That's all I got.
I love it. And you know what I also want to just own and honor, that what you're saying is not only are you showing that, modeling it, but you're also giving people permission to show up in their authentic ways, that not everybody has to be like you. Not everybody has to do the same lesson as you, but that invitation that is so beautiful, that's Laurie, like you say, here's what I do in my lesson. It's really fun. And it brought me joy. And you do you, honey, right? Like you do you.
Yeah. And when people say, like,
and
is
it's
there
enough.
A script? Yeah, it's enough. That's what I was just going to say, right? Like when people say, is there a script, but how did you say it? In what tone? In what way? Can you videotape? No, you do you. Take it. Take it. Don't think you're stealing. You're not. That's why it's out there. There's nothing so sacred in that room that I will not share it, because sharing is caring. I want you to come here and find the ideas, and I want you to make it. Yours shouldn't look like mine. You're making it your own in your own community of needs. And that's what I want to see, right? That's the highest compliment. It's not imitating exactly what I've done.
Totally. And it's not aiming for perfection or it being a certain way. When we start getting out of that messiness and just saying, like, I'm just going to show up and do this lesson the best that I can, because of, like you said, your why is to bring joy to every lesson, to every classroom, to your students. When we can honor that, it gives other people the permission to just say, like, I'm going to show up and do the best that I can. And this this lesson may go the way I want it to, it may not. That's teaching. We've all been there. We've all had flops, right?
Some of my favorite times have been where I've stopped a class and gone, oh, guys,
we're not going there.
You know what, folks, that did not go as planned. Let's stop right here, right now. Let Mrs. Mack regroup and rethink this, because I saw it going way differently in my head. My head was working in a totally different direction. Let's stop. What can we replace this with right now? I'm going to come back tomorrow and try again. right?
Mm,
Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. And when I do
mhm,
that, I feel so proud. I feel
mhm.
more proud than I ever could have believed as a first year
Yeah.
teacher that I'm being real and saying, nope, that
Yeah.
was a flop, total flop, and I own it. That's on
Yeah.
me. And it's okay
Yeah.
because I'm going to come back tomorrow and try again.
Yeah. And that's life. We all do this, right?
Life. And that's all I
Yeah.
ask of them is come back
Hmm.
and try again tomorrow. That's all I want. I want you to fall in love with this place and I want you to come back for more.
And then we can heal and be well, which is what you said. I love it.
Yeah.
Lori, one of my favorite, like, we could talk forever and we might have to have a part two because this is
All
so much
good.
fun. But I also know that, people have lives and they want to go and do other things. But I love to end with one important question for everybody. And that's something that brings me joy. And I often share with people one of the things that makes me shake off an end of a very long day is I have kitchen dance parties. It's where I throw my tunes on while I'm making my dinner. I get my kids to dance around. Sometimes they do willingly, and sometimes I, strap my arms around them and
Yeah.
make them shimmy with me.
I hear you.
Um,
Yeah.
but I love to think about guilty pleasure songs, like the songs that come on when you hear it, you're like, I cannot not dance to this, right? And I know
Yeah.
you're a huge Pink fan because so am I.
Yes.
And maybe
Yes.
that's where we're going. But if
Yes.
there was, and maybe it's not, and that's okay if it's not. But if there was
Yeah.
one song that came on, you were like, I am up on the dance floor. Could
Okay.
could you choose one? What's one
So
song? What's your guilty pleasure song?
well, how about this? I knew I've seen you ask this question and I knew it was coming and I thought I kind of need to be a little bit of a disruptor rule breaker because I cannot just choose one. So here's my reasoning. Number one, because I'm not I love to dance in my kitchen as well, and our kids know that. But I'm more of like a singer. Like I want to like belt it. Like I want to stand on a chair and like take my water bottle and like, so the first one would have to be Ice Ice Baby because I know every word and I
Me
rapped it.
too.
I did rap that at the Ellen show and on my wedding and at our Teachers These Days launch party. Like I will rap that wherever I can.
All
So I
right,
have
Vanilla
that
Ice is going on for sure.
yes, but that's not a real dance song. It's not super dancey. So I do have to go with Pink, and my favorite is "I Am Here." That
Me
song, I
too.
cannot not with that song. I cannot.
And
Like
does it give you goosebumps? It gives me goosebumps every time I
I
hear it.
literally have goosebumps now talking about the song. It doesn't even have
Mhm.
to be playing. So I'm thinking I was
Mhm.
driving I was driving up to Whitecourt on Friday and I doing the whole thing, the dance, the singing, and I just like hit it again, hit it again, hit
Yeah.
it again. I will listen to it over and over, but that's the one that doesn't matter what's happening. The world stops for I Am Here.
Oh, well, it'll go on my playlist. I think it's already on my playlist,
It
actually, because it's
probably
one of my
is.
favorites too.
Yeah,
But I'm adding
exactly.
Vanilla Ice for sure, because who
Yes, yes.
cannot not sing all
Learn
that?
the words. You want to talk a joy starter, just rap along to a little Vanilla Ice. I tell you, it brings me all
I,
kinds of joy.
I have to tell you, I have this vivid image of being like 12, and we had a house. I grew up in a place called Prince George in
Yeah.
northern BC, and we had like my driveway was really steep, and then my parents had a basketball hoop that was really high up, so it was not even close to being able to be easy. And I had my old ghetto blaster, and I have this friend and I, we had our hats on sideways, and we're like just lobbing
Launch.
basketballs as high as we can, singing Vanilla Ice at the top of our lungs. So I hear you. That just brought back such a crazy memory for me.
Get that
So
sideways hat and have that kitchen dance party, and I'll be rapping along with you. I promise.
I love it. Laurie, thank you for your time today and for bringing your beautiful humanness to this call and this interview. And I can't wait for our paths to cross again.
Thank you so much.